Well, the question is, how did we first meet? And the story goes as follows. When I was working in Baltimore, I read an article by James Michener about an organization called the Academy of Senior Professionals at Eckerd College. And I thought, what a great organization to belong to once I retire. So when I did retire, this was in '92, I came down to Florida to apply for membership. You had to apply, you didn't just automatically join. And guess who was working there? Dorothy. She was the program coordinator, and so I could see her in action. Very attractive, very good personality, but very prim and proper looking. She had her hair in a bun, and I thought, oh, I was going through a divorce at that time, so I was sort of looking, and I thought, nah, too prim and proper for me, not my type. So, but I was still thought, well, maybe. We started to have get-togethers for lunch at her office, and we would talk about our past and our lives, and came to find out that she wasn't as prim and proper as I thought.
Yeah.
She had been involved in previous marriages as I had been. And so one thing led to another from that point on. Now you take it from there.
Boy, when he got out of that little white sports car, corduroy jacket, leather patches on the sleeves, carrying a briefcase to come to his interview with me, that was the first time I'd seen him, was his appointment with the interview to see if he qualified, and of course he did.
She reviewed all the applications, so
It was a pleasure. I got to find out he was, as he said, not bringing a wife or extra children with him. And I thought, isn't this interesting? I was immediately attracted to his intellect and his sports car. It was great. That was my first reaction.
yes. So I thought, well, I'll ask her out for a date. And she said no, she couldn't do that because at the time she was involved in another relationship. And so she didn't feel right about doing that until she moved out to be on her own. And so that's what we did. We waited until she moved to Point Brittany, which is a condominium down the road here. And we started to date, and the more we dated, the more we felt this looked like a good relationship, a lot of potential.
I did feel it was okay to close my office door during the lunch hour and share lunch with him and find out all about his past. And it was checkered, but we met every day for lunch in my office with the door closed for months before we had our first date, our first official date.
Yes.
However, part of my job was attending all the activities with the academy. And of course, he was there as he did become a member, and I was there in my official capacity. So if we just happened to have seats next to each other for dinner or the theater or all these things we found we both liked together, I didn't consider that a date.
After a few months of getting together like this and dating occasionally, we decided, at our age, if we're serious about each other, let's get married. So we did. And on the day that we got married, which was at the Vinoy downtown in the Rose Garden, that same day I got a divorce. So it was divorce in the morning, marriage in the afternoon.
We were surely glad it went smoothly. It could have been trouble otherwise. We had printed invitations, a little reception. Everything was reserved. And then we left on this fabulous honeymoon first we arrived in Paris, We went to France, to Spain, to Portugal with 40 people.
All Catholics from St. John's Church on the beach.
I'm not
I was a
Catholic.
Catholic at the time, but it was a Marian pilgrimage. And Dorothy agreed that she would be willing to go along. She was the only non-Catholic, but we had a great time. And one of the things that we experienced during this trip to Europe, every place we went to, there were daisies, which is Dorothy's favorite flower.
I carried them at our wedding, and he wore a daisy boutonniere.
So we interpret that to be a very good sign.
Before we got married, I had to qualify in certain areas. Like one of the things he loved was dancing, as did I. I didn't particularly know square dancing, but was certainly willing to learn, and I had done some. So we had all those lessons. Wasn't that fun?
Yeah, square dancing and round dancing was a big activity for us in our earlier days.
And we had matching outfits.
Yes, yeah, it's a
That's
great
it.
activity.
He said, hold on to your hat. Life with me will never be dull. And it hadn't been. He has shown me the world. We've been to over 60 countries, so he's literally given me the world through cruises and tours.
Yeah, 40 cruises we've been on. I think our travel days have pretty much come to an end, so that's one of the big adjustments that we've had to make as we get older, is we can't do all the things we used to do. But there are other things we do that we like working on puzzles.
And bridge.
And playing bridge. And I've taken up chess recently, so these are all things that keep us very busy, especially during this pandemic.
It's really fun to think back, though, that in the 50s, when I was married to Kip, he was married to Mary. And then he went on and wed Marilyn, and I moved to Florida with Bud. And then not long after that, I found Pete and married Pete, and you found Nancy and married and had a long relationship with Nancy. Next, Warren just swept me off my feet. And during that time, Sophia came along, and that's where the Catholic element came in. It was a mystical thing for Henry.
Yeah, it was a mystical experience. I had been a Unitarian previously for 35 years. So converting to Catholicism was a big step, but it felt right. So after we got married, we wanted to get married in the Catholic Church. But the priest said, no, you have to go through an annulment first of all your previous marriages. And that's something we just didn't want to do. So we ended up going to the Episcopal Church. And that was a good compromise, and we did that for a number of years until we moved here to the Shores. And we've been here at the Shores now, 18 years?
And when we were going to get married, though, Henry has 2 daughters, and the one knew that the divorce was going to be finalized in the morning. We were getting married in the afternoon. And she said, why? Then later she said, well, you certainly tried it all out, but she said you finally got it right.
And I did.
And that was 26 years ago.
Yep. So that's it in a nutshell.
I remember the first time I met you. It was our freshman year at Eckerd College during freshman orientation, 1964. And there was some kind of gathering at the pool maybe. And I remember thinking that you were just one of the most handsome guys I'd ever seen. But then I noticed that you had a plaid shirt and striped pants, and I thought, And we did kind of were friends, but we kind of ran in slightly different circles until our senior year.
Yeah, in our senior year, we were starting, one of the things that happened during those other years, is first few years, 3 years, where we were dating other people. I was dating an older woman, and you were older woman, student, and you were
great ahead.
and you were dating an older guy. And then they graduated and left. So we kind of just got together, we went to concert together.
Actually, we had the same on-campus job. We were
Our senior year.
tutors for logic, and we would be in this mostly empty classroom a couple evenings a week. Very few people showed up, so we just kind of, really had time together.
Yeah, got to talk and share, share stories. And then Christmas time came, and I went to Iowa to visit my girlfriend, and was really debating, will I propose or not? And I didn't. I came home and didn't propose, and about 2 weeks later, I got a call from her, and she said, "Bill, I just got engaged to an old high school boyfriend." So I came running over to your dorm, and cried on your shoulder. "Ooh, she's getting married."
Yes.
So our relationship
it really kind of began to blossom at that point. And one of our first real dates was you invited me over a long weekend to go to meet your grandmother in Plant City. Your mom's family, the Marins, were about 3-4 generation Floridian Plant City folk, and your grandfather, after retiring from being an engineer, bought a small farm, and he had died just before Christmas, and I actually got to meet him. He was taking you over there for Christmas. But they lived in a traditional square Florida home, no air conditioning, with these lovely verandas. I remember they had a little citrus grove, and we walked through the citrus grove, and you would pull a grapefruit down, or a tangerine.
Probably in a tangerine.
Probably a tangerine or an orange, and you would peel it and feed me, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I was just falling in love. But the real test was when I went to the bathroom the first time in the house, and I looked down next to the toilet was one of those really very large hairy spiders that was just living just right under the toilet. I went, okay, luckily I'm not terrified of spiders, but I was like curious. So when I went out and talked to Grandma Marin and said, do you know there's a spider? Oh yes, isn't he great? Eats all the mosquitoes. And I passed the test.
You passed the test. If you'd come screaming out of there, we would have had to leave.
Right.
That would have been it. Or if you'd killed the spider.
I tell you nothing. Yeah, so that was really great. And then we had to tell your parents, and your mom came down from Kentucky, and we took her out to her favorite place, Fort DeSoto.
And had her walking down the beach, and we started explaining our wonderful plans.
We'd both been accepted at the University of Chicago for graduate school, and we explored housing, and we decided we can sell our parents, we can tell them that it's cheaper for two of us to live together as one than going separately, and of course we had to get married.
Well, of course, we'd never do this without. And then while Mom was sticking her feet in the water and just thinking about going swimming, we were telling her, explaining all these wonderful plans, and she said, well, sure, yeah. And her eyes were beaming because she was so excited to be in the Florida in the water.
And then about 6 weeks later, maybe a month later, we get this letter from your father going, what the heck are you guys thinking?
The letter.
You having known each other 3 months, you can't believe that you're thinking about this.
Yes, and you were asking me about should you get engaged at Christmas, and now you're to another woman.
Yeah, right, so what did you do? Well, we talked to your folks.
We talked to them, and gradually they began to fall in love with you.
Yeah.
The day we got married was interesting.
The first time I really met your dad was, I was singing in the, I was a member of the concert choir, and we did a tour through Kentucky and Virginia, and we happened to stop at Nashville. This huge snowstorm came, and so the tour had to stop for 2 nights, and your folks drove up from Hopkinsville to Nashville and picked me up and took me to your house. I went AWOL from and had a wonderful couple of days with them, and that's when we convinced your parents that this was a good thing.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. And I think our relationship has really grown over the years in a lot of different ways. We started on different career paths and they have kind of intertwined. You first started at divinity school. I was in graduate school as a social work. You switched to social work. We both worked in Sarasota, where our kids were born. And then you got the second call to ministry, and we moved to Richmond, Virginia, where you got your doctor of ministry, and I got a master's in religious education combined with my social work.
Went through that time, and as our kids were growing up too, we decided we'd like to try to co-pastor. And so when I left the church I'd been in for about 12 years.
In Richmond, after I had my MDiv and had worked at the seminary for 9 years.
Yeah, we went to Lutz, Florida, and as co-pastors, and began to explore what that would be like. We had some interesting experiences in that church particularly that were tough, but also nurturing for us.
I think the co-pastoring was just really, a lot of couples would say, I can't believe you could work with your spouse. And I used to say, well, after 30 years, we really worked out most of our conflict, how to resolve I mean, we still have conflicts, but how to resolve them. And we co-pastored a total of 12, 15 years together.
And for the first 4 years there was very tough. It was there was a lot of tension, not between us, but between us and the church. They wanted to know who wore the pants.
Yeah,
It was like, come on, cool it. We both wear the pants. I mean, it just, we had to
think
work
now
that out.
our relationship still is a partnership. We've often said, you do the flowers and food, you take care of the garden and do almost all the shopping. I do the finance and fabric. I do most of the laundry and take care of our clothes and stuff. So we kind of divided things up that way. Now it's not quite so fine
Yeah, I'm sort of,
separation.
I think I'm the house husband and you're the working woman, even though you're retired.
Volunteer,
You're volunteering. Yeah.
But we support each other in those pieces.
Yeah.
And,
Every once in a while we get a little tense.
It's been 52 wonderful years.
Yeah, we're
of
just
growing and
53rd.
yeah, we're into our 53rd year. And I just can't imagine loving anybody as much as I've loved you over these years.